Good morning. This is our second day in Jeju, and we are starting the second day of 10th IEVE. I want to welcome you all to the 6th Korea, China, and Japan EV Business Forum. So, I am the co-chairman of the planning committee, and currently I'm at Seoul National University. My name is Kim In Hwan. Very nice to meet you. So the purpose of our gathering today is to talk about the three countries, how we can lead the global EV community and the EV market, and how to collaborate for that. We'll be talking about technology, battery, parts and components, and materials. So we will talk about how we can collaborate and how to expand the market of the three countries and the related policies. So today's session is held hybrid, online and offline together. The timing is from 10 o'clock to 12:45. It will be about 2 hours and 45 minutes of length. 20 minutes are for our opening ceremony, and we will be hearing special lectures for about 30 minutes. And we have also 15 minutes each, three presentations, strategies for entering the global market through EV cooperation. And we will have a special session from CCPIT. The chief representative of CCPIT will be delivering a brief presentation, and then we will have a discussion session with all the speakers. And we will be ending at 12:45. Before we begin, I want to name all our distinguished guests today. Mr. Lee Tae-shik. President Lee Tae-shik is here. He is also the advisor of IEVE. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. Thank you very much. I want to name two consulate generals. The country name by alphabet order. First, Wang Ruxin from China. Takeda Katsutoshi from Japan. And Ambassador Baek Bum-hum. Very nice to have you here, Ambassador. And also, Ambassador of Internal Relations, Ambassador Ko Yunju. Without further ado, let us hear from Mr. Lee Tae-shik.
예, 됐습니다.
Very good morning. My name is Lee Tae-shik. I want to congratulate the opening of the 6th Korea, China, and Japan EV Business Forum. I want to thank the IEVE Organizing Committee and also Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat, China Consulate General in Jeju, and also Japan Consulate General in Jeju. Thank you very much for joining us out of your very busy schedules. When it comes to the EV market, it is rapidly expanding globally. Very recently, the US government has mentioned by 2030, they would be selling new EVs 10 times larger than what they are doing today. Again, the market is expanding, and we are talking about energy and climate changes and environment. And again, this is the core of our next industry. The three countries have already gained global competitiveness in EVs. I hope that through this forum, we want to do more collaboration in our industry sectors for a more strong collaboration between the three countries. We also want to think more about the policy collaboration and also education and also human resources. This is what we can do in future collaborations, and they are the most important thing. I really hope that today's forum can help for this future collaborations and also lead to a better future, a sustainable future. I really hope good health and prosperity of everyone here today. Thank you very much.
예, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Next, we will hear from Wang Nuxin, the Consulate General of China in Jeju.
존경하는 이태식
Honorable Chairman, ambassadors, related members, and all the distinguished guests. Good morning. As introduced, I'm Wang Nuxin, Consulate General of China in Jeju. First of all, congratulations on the opening of 6th Korea-China-Japan Business Forum. And I'd like to thank all the members of organizing committee. Nature is the mother of life, and realizing sustainability is our common mission. For several years, EV industry is growing rapidly. For sustainability of car industry, and with that, we can realize carbon neutrality to respond to climate change. Our government is pursuing green growth. By 2030 and by 2060, we will achieve net zero. Eco-friendly car industry can realize no carbon economy. So the government is supporting in many sectors such as subsidies and taxes and benefits. So with a lot of policies and responses, our government is promoting EV industries. 2020 sales of eco-friendly car is about 7 million cars. Compared to last year, it's about 90% of growth. For 8 consecutive years, the sales is #1 in China, in the world. EV new car sales is about 25%. And charging station installation is growing as well. It's about 5 million in 2020, so it's the largest infrastructure in the world. So, China has built a foundation for charging stations. And it has core technologies, and China is open to other countries for EVs. It's open to communication for technology innovation, for mutual growth. The three countries are neighbors, so these countries have to work together for EV industry's promotion. And this forum will expand cooperation not only in Korea, China, Japan, and also in ASEAN countries. So I think it's very meaningful. Many experts, business leaders have joined here, so they will be able to have cooperation and communication in here to promote cooperation for EV industry so that we can realize low carbon development. Once again, I'd like to congratulate on the successful opening of 6th Korea China Japan Business Forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Consul General. Actually, General Wang Rushin mentioned the importance of our collaboration. And again, let us invite Consul General Takesa Kazutoshi for his opening remarks. Thank you very much.
여러분
Very good morning. I am Takeda. I am stationed here in Jeju. Very nice to meet you. This is a very special venue. I want to thank you, the IEVE, and President Kim Dae-hwan, and also Mr. Lee Tae-shik. I want to thank you again, everyone. And to also thank for all the participants here who came here out of your very busy schedule, all the ambassadors and all the generals from the three countries, all the distinguished guests. Thank you again. Very good to see you. And it is a great honor for me also. When it comes to the IEVE, all the sessions today, our session, the three countries EV Business Forum, today is its 6th anniversary. Until now, we have talked about how we can collaborate by experts in this forum. We talked about how to actually collaborate and make our technologies further, and how we can expand our markets in the global market. And we have been continuously forming networks to collaborate. So today, we will talk about the future vision of EV. We will hear from very distinguished speakers, and we will hear from the ideas, and I hope we can utilize these ideas for a sustainable future and for global cooperation also. Last but not least, I want to thank again all the organizers for this event, and I hope health and prosperity of everyone here today. Thank you very much.
예, 감사합니다.
Thank you so much for your congratulatory remarks. He talked about the market expansion and idea sharing. Next, we will invite Go Yunju, Ambassador of International Relations of Jeju Special Self-Governing Province.
Very good morning. As introduced, I am Ko Yoon-ju, Ambassador of International Relations of Jeju Special Self-Governing Province. I want to thank again all the distinguished guests and all the participants here today. Thank you very much for being with us today. So, for me, I am an ambassador myself, so I want to briefly talk about what I think why collaboration is needed. So first, about 2 weeks ago, I actually saw a special report in the Economics magazine. And actually this is about the first time I actually learned about the EV, what is going on worldwide. So what is the most important here is the three countries actually are ruling the market, especially in the battery market. The three countries are dominating the global market for batteries. Given that, so the reason why we have to collaborate, actually that is very easy to think about. So first, I believe the demand of the market. Because the three countries are doing the best in the market, these companies have the most advanced technologies. So if we collaborate, we are living the fourth industrial revolution age, and amidst of these times, the best three countries can collaborate for more to provide the best technologies to all the users worldwide and give them the cheapest card. That would be contributing a lot for the global users. And that would mean a lot for them, for the market. Again, the reason is that the best performing three countries can collaborate for a better future. That was my first point for collaboration. And the second point is, so for my first reason, I mentioned the market itself. The second reason is for moral reasons. When it comes to EV, it tackles the global climate change. It is a very strong tool. We are talking about reducing carbon, and we are talking about reducing fossil fuels. And everyone is agreeing on this worldwide. The most powerful tool under the current technology would be the penetration of EV, so that we can stop using ICE cars and use less fossil fuels. So again, that is how we can tackle the global climate change, and it is our greatest mission. Again, that is a moral reason and what the global community needs. Again, as a global citizen, it is a must for us. And again, for moral reasons, we are at the forefront. The three countries are at the forefront of EV technologies, and this is a must for us to collaborate. And it is logical also. The third reason I can say is, so as an ambassador, I have to think about, as a diplomat, the market, the moral needs. Now we are talking about the environment. So what is the needed environment for that? The trilateral cooperation, I have to think about the geopolitical issues. So that is a more realistic question, whether it is really possible. But for me, I believe it is possible. Risks also come with possibilities, with chances. There are room for new chances. And so from the smallest point, we can start collaboration. We can make an effort. So all in all, if we think about the market demand and our moral must, these are the two backbones of our collaboration. We have a framework for future collaboration, and in this framework, the three countries, despite the current geopolitical issues, company to company, there is possibility for us to start collaboration on smaller things. So that was my three thinkings, my three thoughts as a diplomat. And from a Jeju perspective, here in Jeju, we want to learn about the EV companies from the three countries. Jeju has a vision of making a carbon-free island by 2030, and this is carbon-free vision under the current technology. The most important thing is the penetration, wide penetration of EVs. So we want to learn from the best countries, from best companies from the three countries. So I believe that this forum can serve as a venue for us to learn from you. I will be listening also. Thank you very much.
예,
Thank you so much, Ambassador Go. He talked about market issues and moral issues and geopolitical issues as a diplomat. And he also talked about net zero in Jeju Island. So it was very insightful. Before we begin the special speech, we will take a commemorative photo time with distinguished guests, and then we'll move on to the special speech. So, distinguished guests, please come onto the stage.
예,
Thank you so much. We said we are family, meaning the three countries are family members. So let's move on to the special speech. First speaker's title is Pushing the Strategic Green Mobility. The speaker is Mr. Albert Lam from Detroit Electric Holdings, and he's the chairman. So please invite him to the stage.
Abdurram. Yep.
Hello. Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, once again, thank you for being with us today. And I've been coming here since 2014, where we launched this car. It was many years ago now, seems like a decade or two ago. Funny enough, this car has a lot of Korean element in it. The battery actually comes from a very specialized military battery from Korea, and is one of the highest energy density battery at the time. And then the infotainment system within the car is actually using a Samsung iPad, or Samsung Pad. And this is all Bluetooth control, and we got a lot of awards with that. So there's a lot of Korean kind of element in this car, and we launched it here in Asia. The first site, we launched it in Jeju. So I'm very proud to be back here. I've been attending this conference for 7 years now, and I only missed it twice because of COVID. But I'm back here. It's really nice. Actually, I gave this presentation yesterday. So some of you might have heard it. I apologize. But maybe today I will emphasize a lot more in terms of some of the collaboration Japan and Korea has with China as well. Global warming and greenhouse gas emission is not just what EV can address. EV is only one element of the whole puzzle. We need to look at the whole global context in terms of what we can do, in terms of how we can tackle the whole aspect of global warming. And it's down to one word. The word is consumerism. We need to learn how to manage consumerism. Unfortunately, consumerism drives all the GDPs, all the growth of the country, and all the manufacturing sector, employments, etc. We keep on demanding things. We keep on want to sell more, and users want to buy more. We earn more money so that we can buy more things. Is that the way to go? Because the resource is limited. And every time when we buy new things, we need energy to produce those things. And we generate carbon. We generate greenhouse gases. We only have one planet, although some of us believe that we can move to Mars. I'm a bit skeptical, but not in my lifetime anyway. So I'm going to skip through some of this. So when we talk about EV, we just can't talk about EV alone. We have to talk about energy generation, because EV is about making the EV need energy, using the EV need energies. It's no different from the gasoline car. So where we are today, we know that, right? Actually, Nissan did a very good study over the years. He produced that study in 2020. And that study shows if you drive a EV, the greenhouse gases footprint is about half of what you drive in terms of a gasoline vehicle. Now, you can see very complicated in terms of gasoline. To power a gasoline car, you need to go through all this process, right? Drill the stuff, you need electricity, and then shipment of the gasoline to the station. Also, you need more pollution. But it's much more straightforward for EV. But overall, you still need to manufacture the vehicle itself. The battery needs manufacturing. So all this consume energy. When you consume energy, so all things equal, a EV saves about half of the carbon footprint of producing an EV as well as producing a gasoline vehicle. So EV is not the silver bullet that we need to solve all. Why is that? Why I say this? Not just because the environmental stuff that we are looking at, but if you look at the whole global energy, this source is quite recent, it's 2020, but it's produced in 2021. And if you look at the sector here, this is the global context of global greenhouse gases emission sector by sector, okay? Spend a little bit more time to look at this, right? Look at transportation here. That includes road transportation, aviation, shipping. And if you look at heating the building, energy used for building, lighting, heating, all this need about 17%. Now, not many of us talk about building a greener building, talking about energy-saving building. Now, China is doing a little bit of that, and I know some part of Japan is doing a little bit of that. So it's not just one area that we need to tackle, because if we can address this part, it only represents 16% of the overall emission. So if today we all drive and fly and transport our stuff using electric vehicles or electric means to power the vehicle itself, we only save 11% of the emission. 11% is like 10% is like nothing, because we still need to address the 90% who is contributing to the greenhouse gases. So why EV generated so much attention? Why EV is so important? Everybody talk about EV. I'm going to drive an EV. I'm going to do this. I'm going to save the planet. I'm going to save the polar bear because I'm driving an EV. Because human being is really funny species. We want to have the illusion of control. Because if we need to tackle the two, like eating an elephant, there was one speaker saying that, oh, you eat the elephant, but you eat it one bite at a time. So human being would like to see that, okay, I'm contributing to the society. There's the illusion of control. I will be able to control this. I feel good by contributing to the society. I feel good I'm buying EV. I'm less guilty of polluting the world. And the other is the feel-good factor. When we buy things, we're happy. We show off our achievement. Why we drive a Mercedes or why we wear expensive watch, because we want to say to people that I have achieved in life. Thank you very much. And you haven't yet, but keep working at it. So the third thing, which is very important, and that's what drives some of the country, right, which I will go into later on, and it's about the strategic growth of that country. They treat it as a strategic plan over years. Then they use it as a differentiator for growth, okay? Now, we had the computer age. Initially, we have the Industrial Revolution, and then the machinery, and then the car industry, and then the IT industry, right? All this is not within Asia. It's all this driven in foreign land like Europe, like America. But if you look at what we have now, Asia, is that we are the hub. We are the epicenter of EV. Why is that? Because not only we have the market, we have all the technology we need. EV is a computer on 4 wheels, right? And who has been making computers? Who has been making battery for the computers? Accidentally, I just, a sidebar, how EV technology comes about is because of portable computer. When Japan, Panasonic created a battery initially, to put into the portable computer, laptops, they invented this small battery. That's the only means that we can put into the car. And that will enable us to create EV, right? Motor has always been around, right, for generations. But battery technology has progressed so much due to the computer age. And that's why we are where we are today, is with EV. So I think we are at the forefront, Asia, of EV technology. Because first, EV technology is much simpler than combustion engine in terms of components, in terms of timing, in terms of technology. But because we have been working on the computer age as a manufacturer, Japan, China, Korea, that will enable us to be in a prime position to go into this new sector. So, the biggest market at the moment for EV is China. I'm going to spend a little bit of time, because this is a very good prime example, what we can learn from China. As a global, I presented this in Norway, in one of the big conferences they have, green conferences they have. And I said to them that, look, China don't do just don't do thing by accident. They plan. Just like the Japanese, Toyota have a 40 years forward plan. And I was involved with some of their consulting work, and I know they have a blueprint for 40 years in terms of their cars. They won't change it. They keep on going at it and making it better and better. So when you look at this, right, China has the same principle and philosophy. They don't look at EV as their strategic means to fix the global warming context, the greenhouse gases problem. They look at the whole transportation system as a whole. So it's not just one element they are looking at. They are planning, they look at the whole element, but they look at EV as a strategic means to export their technology, to export, to generate export income. Now, I have to skip a little bit. Everybody knows about China. Everybody blames China for the greenhouse gases because we chose China to be the manufacturer, right? We put all the manufacturing stuff, handphone, computer, washing machine, we put it into China. And we say, oh, China, you're the big polluter. But we choose to make them the big polluter because they are a manufacturer. So it's not right just to say that, oh, I'm a consumer, but it's China polluting. But you're buying the stuff. Just they're making it. So this is an important slide. Maybe take a little bit of time looking at it. Look at Norway. All right? As I said, I was presenting this in Norway. They all clapped when they saw this slide. They are already there. 99% of their energy comes from renewable. 99%. look at some of the country here, right? Burning fossil fuel, South Africa is the worst, and then Japan is growing, and then China is somewhere here as well. Yeah, China is somewhere at 66%. But they have a plan to reduce this carbon footprint in terms of energy production. As I said, the most important thing that we need to tackle is not just transportation. It is about energy. Energy drives everything. So this is the plan that China has. It's well published. At the moment, they have a target for 2025. They're getting there. 52% will be using coal in terms of power their energy needs. And as the General Counsel said this, by 2060, China wanted to be carbon neutral, 3% from coal. A lot bets is on nuclear as well as renewable energy to power China. Now, as I said, China don't do things by accident. They do a 30 years forward planning in terms of their country. I just want to highlight this, right? This is a plan they published 20 years ago. I remember in 2009, 2000, just after 2000, and I was working in China as a consultant to the automotive industry. And they already have a plan to say that, okay, energy saving and new energy vehicle development plan made in China. Now, they want to be the net exporter of energy, of technology at that time. And they're planning for it. So they've been working towards that. Right? As I said, I think to tackle global warming as a country, as a whole, the government needs to take the initiative to plan ahead. Because if I just push out EV and everybody buys EV, it's not going to help that much. You have to think about the whole transportation system, buses, trains, how to get people around to work, to holidays, to school. So this is their plan. Okay, they already said this and announced it. And this is how they tackle in terms of normal transportation within the city between 1 to 50 kilometers. They use a bus, metro, underground, taxi, or bicycle. In Beijing, there's still a lot of people who start cycling. And then intermediate range, short range, they use cars, right? 1 to 500 kilometers. They build really nice highway and road. Now, this is part of the planning. I'm not particularly saying that, oh, China is the only one doing it. Japan has a very good rail system. But that's what I'm saying. People do plan ahead, and then in a city. But you will find that within all this context, all this can be electrified. And today, all the high-speed rail in Japan, as well as Korea, as well as China, is electrified. There's no more diesel. And the rest, you can actually replace it with hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, as well as EV for energy saving. The only thing you need to address is the long range for planes in the city. So I think Consul General touched on this already regarding the charging station. They're applying a lot of energy into it. Now, China has been learning. They are the global manufacturer. Now, this chart will tell you how they've been partnering, right? These are the Chinese company. These are their foreign partner over the last 30 years. Although they are learning to manufacture, but for these people and open up the market for them. But at the same time, they're learning from them. Every one of them has been learning from GM, Toyota, Ford, and all this company, and allowing them to move to the next stage and develop their own cars. Now, China still also faces problem as well in terms of charging, because charging time is not enough charger. And the power grid cannot sustain the growth of EV at the moment. And that's why they are rationing some of the chargers. I'm going to speed up a little bit, and I won't touch on that. So what I'm saying, the history will repeat itself. Just like Japan has done very well, just like Korea has done very well in terms of producing really nice car And initially, they are selling domestically, but then they export it. China is doing the same now. And China, this time, is because of their plan, they are using EV as their technological advancement, as their technological differentiator. They allow them to sell the car in Europe now. They can sell the car, not just because they are cheap, they're good. People are buying Chinese EV cars. Now, finally, I just want to touch on that. So, from what I've been looking at in terms of research, EV is not the silver bullet. You need to look at transportation holistically. Make sure that every single stage is planned. So government has a lot to do with this planning, long-term planning, in terms of how do I move people around, right? And then learn to teach the new generation about consumerism. If you don't have to upgrade your phone, the phone is still working. Don't waste the resource to upgrade your phone. Drive your car a little bit longer. So educate and address consumerism. And then the long-term commitment, look at alternatives. As I said, nuclear in terms of power, as well as hydrogen. And I do a close now. Thank you very much.
감사합니다.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for not giving you plenty of time, but that was very informative. You mentioned 3 things: why we need EVs to feel good, to make ourselves good, and for a kind of status. And you also mentioned the Chinese market and its industry. Now let us invite our next speaker. Our next speaker will be touching upon cooperation, which is more important than ever, supported by international standards. Let us invite Gabriela Ehrlich, Director of Communications at IEC. Director?
안녕하세요. Excellencies, dear participants, I'm trying to build on the introductions by the ambassadors and by Albert Lam, and try to talk a little bit about cooperation. Some of it may be very obvious, and I hope some of it is not. We're very social creatures. We have a need for cooperation, and it's part of our nature. And it's how we interact with the world around us. We depend on others for our survival, for our well-being, and for our happiness. Cooperation allows us to achieve common goals. When people hunted mammoths, they had to work together, otherwise they couldn't have eaten. We can solve problems, we can share work, and we can share our resources. And this benefits everyone around us. So cooperation is not only a necessity, it is part of what makes us human. Many cultures recognize the importance of cooperation. Aristotle, the great Greek philosophers, referred to it in terms of friendship and community. For Kant, it was part of the universal moral law that expects that we treat others with respect and dignity. Now, traveling through Asia, I found that cooperation seems to be very much embedded as a cultural concept in many countries. And when I researched this topic for this keynote, I found that in South Korea, the concept of jong, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, seems to be a very important component of the everyday life, and it guides people with how to interact and work with each other. When we had the photo opportunity, it was you're in family, and it seems to me that the word family is very, very much present, at least here at the IEV. We're always calling ourselves family, and it feels like it. And people seem to care about cooperation and try to find good solutions that benefit all. A similar concept exists in Japan, which is translated as wa, It helps achieve balance and build social harmony. And again, rather than promoting individual self-interest, WA tries to motivate people to cooperate for the well-being of everyone. It recognizes the interdependence of individuals and society. And cooperation is also a fundamental concept in Chinese philosophy, and it's expressed by Ren, humanity. It encourages individuals to be kind and benevolent to others. And again, it recognizes that our own well-being is inseparable from the well-being of the community. So in short, there are many similarities between these three countries, these three cultures. Maybe I see it from the outside, but I see also that globally, while we had a culture of very much individualism, very much driven by the US approach, I see that the importance of cooperation is increasingly recognized as we are all facing important and pressing challenges such as climate change, hunger and poverty, energy access, and the better need for a more sustainable and fairer way of living. Individuals and societies are now recognizing the need to act, to go beyond individual interests, embrace a broader perspective that values the common good and hopefully the well-being of future generations. Now, many countries are exploring ways to work together on these global issues. And here I see another ISO and ITU international standards can help simplify agreement, streamline regulations, and provide a multilateral platform for cooperation. Now, the same is true for companies. Companies today operate in a globalized, complex, rapidly evolving environment. Products and services are traded across borders, often multiple times. Value is added along those big international supply chains. Products and services are traded, and many challenges require a multidisciplinary approach. So the fact is, while companies have probably never been as competitive as today, there is an increased need for cooperation to put in place the increasingly big solutions that are needed for our complex problems and issues. And here again, standards and conformity assessment enable this cooperation. By working together, companies can leverage each other's expertise and resources. It doesn't mean because the wheel was invented that there is no space for innovation beyond that. You can invent a way of working together and then innovate each in their own way. So by working together, companies help drive innovation to meet evolving consumer needs. And standards establish that common language and the framework that allows these people, these companies, these governments to cooperate. Standards can also serve as a catalyst for innovation. They allow researchers to compare their new concepts with the performance of solutions that have already been built and are in the market. This helps reduce risks. It speeds up new product development and market introduction. Now, there are multiple examples of cooperation in the technology side between China, Japan, and Korea. In 2003, a common standard for digital broadcasting permitted to build a larger market for digital broadcasting equipment and services. And this was put together under the Tripartite Committee for the Promotion of the Broadcast Multimedia Service Area. In 2014, there was a joint research project on advanced semiconductor technologies, and that helped to develop next-generation semiconductor materials. There is cooperation on environmental technologies in air pollution, control, waste management. This includes joint research projects and technology transfer. In 2016, there was a collaboration on the development and use of robotics with the Japan, China, Korea Robot Industry Promotion Conference. And more recently, a cooperation on the development and the rollout of 5G technology. So beyond challenges and tensions, which are there is a willingness to work together and find technology solutions that can benefit the whole region. Now, the decarbonization of transport can be another example of such a cooperation. Sharing of technology can be important, and it can be useful for the three countries, because each of you has different strengths and expertise in EV production. Collaboration on research and development to accelerate, for example, the innovation on longer battery lives or new kinds of batteries, and maybe the use of less rare materials which are difficult to source. Talking about materials, many of those are coming from beyond the region, and so maybe a better coordination to access and procure those materials may be another way of cooperating. Coordinating supply chains to secure a stable supply of key components and to eliminate or reduce the risk of disruptions. And through the adoption and use of international standards, you can drive down costs, you can expand global markets, which are important for your industries. Because as you said earlier, as some people said, you're the leader in this area. Contrary to cars, which were built in the US, in Europe, now EVs, this is the region that is leading this trend. And by accelerating the technologies, the EV adoption everywhere, you are building opportunities for this industry in this region. You can help others to decarbonize their power infrastructure, reuse batteries, upcycle, circular economy are keywords. And China, Japan, and South Korea all contribute to the development and have adopted and use ISO and IEC standards. International standards for EVs, but also for the infrastructure development. And in technology, experts cooperate. There is no disagreements there. There are only solutions to be found. The next thing we are working on is the all-electric society, because, like Albert said, while it is extremely important that each sector contributes in their own way to sustainability and making the planet more livable, there are many, many sectors that will benefit from electrification, because electrification is the best way of using energy. It uses less energy and it produces less CO2. And I'm sure that you will find many ways to cooperate, and wish you all the best for this forum.
예.
Thank you so much. The director said technology and economic cooperation through standards. And she talked about the origin by telling us the Asian culture. She said Zheng, Hua, In from Korea, Japan, China, respectively, in relation to standard. Thank you. So we'll move to three countries' EV cooperation. It's about strategies for entering the global market through EV cooperation among the three Northeast Asian countries. We have three guests. First is Mr. Ali Izari, the representative of Bloomberg NEF APEC. And he will talk about the status and prospects of the EV industry in Korea, China, and Japan, and trilateral cooperation. So, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I was moved by all the excellent speeches earlier from the distinguished excellencies, as well as Mr. Lam and Ms. Ulrich. It's my pleasure to present to you analysis my colleagues around the world at Bloomberg NEF do on energy transition. Over the next 15 minutes, I'll focus on how we've seen the electric vehicle market evolve, particularly the contributions from China, Japan, and Korea. Let me begin by some good news. The last 3 years, of course, have been very challenging in the world, and that's an understatement to say the challenges that we've had with the pandemic, supply chain, dislocations, inflation, and unfortunately the return of conflict in Europe. Despite all of these challenges, we've continued to see annual investment in deployment of energy transition technologies around the world continue to grow. And last year, for the first time, that investment exceeded $1 trillion. As you can see, historically, the bulk of the investments in energy transition technologies had been in the renewable sector. This is investment in building of solar and wind farms, the yellow part of this chart. But over the last 5 years, we've particularly seen investment in deployment of electric vehicles and associated charging infrastructure, the green portion of this chart, significantly grow. And now that's roughly accounting for about half of the annual investment in energy transition technologies. If you look at electric vehicle sales, in the passenger vehicle segment, 2017 was the first year where annual sales exceeded 1 million. 2 years later, in 2019, that number exceeded 2 million. And a year later, that number exceeded 3 million. And last year, for the first time, that number exceeded 10 million. Very rapid exponential growth over the last 5 years. Now, this chart is showing you the absolute values by country. Naturally, large auto markets such as China, Europe, and the US are larger markets for EVs as well. It'd be more relevant to look at it as share of sales by each country. And if you look at by share of sales, then again, China and Europe lead. This is partly a reflection of the policies that these markets have had. While it's true, China and Europe have started with providing subsidies for EVs, they also put in very stringent regulations that have forced automakers to sell more EVs. In the case of Europe, it's the emission standards that went into effect from 2020. In the case of China, it's both the corporate average fuel consumption standard as well as the new energy vehicle mandate. You can see Korea has also been increasing. Korea's growth of EV market is primarily a reflection of generous subsidies. The regulations was Korea also has an emission standard. It's not that stringent, so still it's possible to continue selling internal combustion engines and qualify with the standards. Similarly, in the case of Japan, the country has had actually pretty generous subsidies for EVs, both for consumers' purchases, but also for charging infrastructure. Japan also has a fairly stringent emission standard. The difference with Japan lagging here is primarily a reflection of Japanese automakers' historical strategies of more emphasis on hybrids. Now, to be fair, in the battery electric vehicle market, actually Japanese automakers, in particular Nissan and Mitsubishi Motors, were the first ones to really introduce mass market EVs more than 15 years ago. So the Mitsubishi Motors' i-MiEV was the first mass-produced battery electric vehicle, which was introduced back in 2009. And the Nissan Leaf was introduced in late 2010, another mass-market BEV. But larger volume Japanese automakers, Toyota and Honda, so far, at least in the domestic market, have not focused on selling EVs yet, although that's starting to change. Now, speaking of change, we do expect this growth to continue, partly because of the regulations. As I mentioned, the EU and China already have very stringent regulations. Under EU's Fit for 55 package, EV sales will have to grow significantly in this decade. And by 2035, the European Union has already put in policies that will result in phase out of new internal combustion vehicle sales by 2035, with an exception for those that are compatible with e-fuels or biofuels. In the case of China, similarly, the NEV mandate as well as the corporate average fuel consumption standard will continue to become more and more stringent. The US, the Biden administration, as many of you are aware, has of course introduced new incentives as part of its Inflation Reduction Act, but also the EPA will be revising the fuel economy standards for model years post 2027 in the coming months. And again, that regulation is expected to increase EV adoption. Korea and Japan have yet to introduce more emission standards, more stringent emission standards, but this may very well change in the coming years. Of course, both countries have set very aggressive emission reduction targets for the 2030 under the nationally determined contribution, which means the transport sector will also have to step up. The regulations are important in what automakers decide to do. Of course, automakers like to talk about that they only offer products that consumers want, but still the role of regulations in forcing automakers to increase consumer choice is very important. We've seen that in China, California, which also has very stringent regulations, but also in European countries such as Norway, which have had more regulatory support for EV adoption, then the number of EV models available in those markets rapidly increase. That model growth certainly benefits consumers. We need to remember that consumers, when they're buying a car, they may not always think about the emission or energy efficiency benefits of the cars. A lot of times the decision to buy a car is purely driven by the brand the consumer likes or the form factor. So ensuring that there are more energy efficient and zero emission vehicle options available in different brands and different form factors is very critical for driving EV adoption. This is particularly an important factor when it comes to emerging markets. If you look at examples here, such as Thailand and Indonesia, these are very price sensitive markets. What this chart is showing you is the composition of vehicle sales in these markets by the vehicle price. You can see that in the case of Thailand, about half of the market is between new cars priced between $20,000 US to $30,000. In fact, there are even segments below that price. So over 60% of the market is for vehicles priced below $30,000 US. In the case of Indonesia, over 75% of the market is for vehicles priced below $20,000. Now, historically, the EV market has been primarily driven by more expensive luxury models, with Tesla being the best example of this. The attempts by Nissan and Mitsubishi Motors to produce mass market EVs still was challenged because those models were still priced above $30,000 US. So this really limited adoption in emerging markets. Here, Chinese automakers have been very successful with introducing new, more affordable models. We already see that Chinese automakers are not only successful in selling these models domestically, but they're starting to export them. Mr. Lam alluded to this earlier. In 2022, China actually exceeded Germany in auto exports, claiming the #2 spot globally, just behind Japan. And a significant part of that was driven by EV exports. Across Southeast Asia, we're starting to see Chinese brands dominate in EV sales. Of course, there are also home-made brands such as VinFast out of Vietnam. This is quite positive. I know the theme of our session is around cooperation, but competition, healthy competition, is also very good. If you have healthy competition in the EV space, this will both increase choice for consumers, but also improve automakers' own performance as well. This is an area where Chinese automakers are leading. Now, Southeast Asia has traditionally been the market dominated by Japanese automakers. In places such as Thailand and Indonesia, historically, Japanese automakers have had a higher sales share than even their home market in Japan. Now we're starting to see in the EV space really Chinese automakers dominate, and of course European automakers and Korean automakers are trying to make inroads as well. Again, all of this competition will help with driving up adoption, but ultimately, of course, to have a self-sustaining EV market, economics is the most important factor. And for economics of EVs, the price of the battery is really important. Now, over the last decade, every year we saw the average price of battery packs decline. What this chart is showing you, the blue bars, this is based on a survey we do every year where we go to automakers, battery manufacturers, as well as the part suppliers, and on confidential basis, we actually gather all their contract data. This is showing you the volume-weighted average pack price. Of course, by chemistry and by market, the numbers can be quite different. But the main message being that until 2021, every year we will see declining prices. This was primarily driven by scale up of manufacturing, accelerated deployment, but also competition as well. So the battery makers had stiff competition to win contracts, and as a result of they had to make sure that they're offering the best price to automakers. 2022 though, you can see that for the first time, the average battery pack price actually increased. So there was a 7% real year-on-year increase. The reason for this was a combination of factors. One, the demand for electric vehicles had grown faster than the supply chain could keep up. And that supply chain isn't really about cell manufacturing. It was actually more to do with the processing of material, particularly for lithium hydroxide and lithium carbonate. So that process capacity had been not expanded fast enough. The result of that was we saw lithium hydroxide and carbonate prices really increase sharply. Of course, other components also increased. We had the overall impact of the inflation and supply chain challenges as a result of the pandemic. And all along, that resulted in the average pack prices increasing. This year, we are already seeing some of the input prices decline relative to last year. So there's a bit of a softening of the inflationary pressure we saw last year. Still, demand has been very strong, and the supply chain expansion is still struggling to keep up with demand. The result of that is this year, we still expect a modest increase in prices. But by next year, as you can see, we do expect to be going back to declining trends. And then again, by 2025, we'll be at a lower price trend. Based on what battery manufacturers already know, so this is not relying on any sort of breakthrough technologies, we still expect that by the middle of this decade, we're looking at average pack prices of below $100 per kilowatt hour. To be fair, that $100 per kilowatt hour for lithium iron phosphate packs in China, that price is already in some contracts possible because it's a very, very competitive market. But for the global average, we expect by 2025, 2026, we'll get there. Now, why do I pick on the $100 kilowatt hour price? This is usually the number that many automakers reference as the point where they can produce EVs at an upfront price parity point with internal combustion engine vehicles. Now, to be fair, this number is a little bit of, not a little bit, it's actually quite an oversimplification. By segment, by application, this number can be lower or higher. Already in light commercial vehicle applications, on total cost of ownership basis, electric vehicles are cheaper than diesel vehicles in Europe and in China. So that has already been achieved. That's actually was achieved pre-pandemic already in 2019. In the consumer segment, from an upfront price parity point, again, you have models such as the Wuling Hongqing Mini in China, which starts at a price point of around $5,000 US. There is no internal combustion engine vehicle you can buy at that price point, actually. So that's already a model that's beating the ICE market. But for mass consumer adoption, about $100 per kilowatt hour is a good sort of benchmark to utilize. If we use that number and we look at policies in place today, we do expect that globally in the passenger vehicle segment, we're going to be exceeding annual sales of 20 million by 2025. Again, you can see as a share of adoption, China and Europe dominate, but we do see Korea as well as Japan continue to grow. The US number, this is analysis pre Inflation Reduction Act. Now, once those incentives go into place, these numbers will likely start to rise a lot more for 2024 and 2025. Now, for long-term adoption, every year we do a couple of scenarios. This is showing you the results from our last scenario, which was published just about 11 months ago. We're going to have the latest version published in just about a month from now. If we only utilize economics as a driver for adoption and exclude any new policy measures. So this includes excluding, for example, the EU Fit for 55 or China's targets or targets of other countries across the world. We already see EV adoption growing quite rapidly purely because of economics. In this modeling, by the way, we do take into account infrastructure challenges as well as consumer choice. So we're reflecting all of that. We're just not applying a policy lever. We're just allowing technology cost to drive adoption. You can see as a share of sales by 2040, globally we're looking at 70% of passenger vehicle sales being EVs. Of course, there's a wide difference between geographies. You can see European countries and China continue to dominate adoption, while emerging markets such as India and Southeast Asia lag behind. If you look at that difference between emerging markets and leading markets, the biggest gap is sort of in the early 2030s, where the leading markets are really growing quite fast, and then by sort of 2040s, that gap starts to close down. Of course, this is as a share of sales. If you're thinking about it in terms of impact on energy and emissions, we really need to pay attention to the fleet, and we need to consider how the fleet turns over. Even in the leading markets, despite the rapid growth in sales, by 2040, only about 60% of the fleet would be electric. In emerging markets, that number would be below 20%. And this is a big challenge when we think about it from the perspective of emissions and the carbon budget that we have left. From that perspective, we would really have to accelerate sales so that by mid-2030s, as jurisdictions such as the EU are targeting, we need to see zero-emission vehicle sales account for close to 100% of the passenger vehicle market. If we do that, then we don't have to push consumers to retire their cars faster than required. Then you will get a sort of a natural economic turnover of the fleet, and by 2050, the fleet will be zero emission. Now, some markets are, particularly China and Europe, are more or less on track for that. Others, there's positive trajectory, but there needs to be an acceleration, while the rest are quite lagging behind. Of course, I spent most of my talk focusing on passenger vehicle market. We shouldn't forget that the road transport segment includes other segments such as 2- and 3-wheelers, which actually electric vehicle adoption has been really positive. Again, here China has been a big market driving, but also other markets such as Vietnam and India are doing quite well. Municipal buses is another segment which is doing quite well. China again had led it, but also Europe is doing quite well. Here in Korea, we've seen very good adoption as well. On the commercial vehicle side, light commercial vehicles are doing relatively well. Medium duty and heavy duty is a bit more challenging. Part of this is technology, but part of it is also regulations. Historically, medium duty and heavy duty commercial vehicles have had more laxed regulations around emissions and fuel economy. This is starting to change, particularly in Europe and California. There are already stringent regulations coming to effect, but we are seeing other jurisdictions consider this as well. So to summarize, I want to emphasize that not only cooperation, but competition is going to be key in helping us in decarbonizing the road transport segment. As was already mentioned earlier, Japan, Korea, and China have been really the drivers of the electric vehicle supply chain technology. While we are starting to see a little bit more tension, some of those tensions are unfortunate and they can provide challenges in driving up adoption, particularly the tensions between the US and China are not positive. At the same time, competition between the companies can be healthy as long as it's on a very transparent, healthy regulatory footing. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. That was a vast data set. And thank you again, Mr. Alizadi. You mentioned about the market outlook and prosperity, and you concluded that we needed both collaboration and competition, and tension might help sometime. Thank you very much. Next, let us hear about Korea's EV industry status and prospects and trilateral cooperation from Vice Chairman Kim Joo-hong of Korea Automobile Industry Association. Let us welcome him to the stage.
예, 반갑습니다.
Very nice to see you. As introduced, I'm from Korea Automobile Manufacturers Association. I am Kim Joo-hong. I want to thank the IEVE and all the organizers for making this great venue. So many speakers have already mentioned. When we talk about the future vehicle, the EV, we are seeing a lot of changes. So how to lead the EV market in the future, it is not very clear. So the three countries are currently making up 45% of EV manufacturing. So thinking about the future, how we can do collaboration in the future will be most important. And maybe we can hope that we can lead the EV market in the future. And given that, our association and the Korean automobile industry are thinking about how to collaborate with China and Japan EV companies. So most of you mentioned the basic of the EV market. And actually, I have prepared my slides in English. I will read some of my Korean slides. So please bear with me. So before we go into the Korean EV market, we talk about the Korean automobile industry. It started in 1950s with the Seabao taxi. It's been more than 60 years. So the Korean automobile industry have rapidly went up. So the size of the manufacturing, China, US, Japan, India, and then Korea arrives at the world sixth. So India made a very fast progression. So it made up to fourth. So Korea used to be fifth, but during COVID times, we went all down to seventh. Currently, we are the world number sixth. Hyundai Kia Motors sold about 6.84 million cars last year, and it is one of the biggest automotive groups in the world. So all in all, the Korean industry has made a great progress in the country. So our export was led by semiconductors. But very recently, vehicle exports actually made a great progress among the bad economy. So last year, this year, we are leading the country export. In the size of manufacturing, it is about 12%. And we created about 1.5 million jobs. So in Korea also, the automotive industry is quite big. And one more thing is the Korean automotive industry market. Globally, starting 2021, the EV market grew very fast. And you know the reasons. And there's been some stagnant issues because of, and some good issues also. There's been some carbon issues, and Tesla has showed a lot of progress. And Tesla quite led the introduction of the EV market. So one more thing is the ICE vehicles with fossil fuels, and compared to that times, most of the Chinese companies didn't have much technology, but in the EV market, China has a lot of technology. So very recently, the EV market has showed a great progress. So given this backdrop, the Korea's EV manufacturing showed a 51.6 year growth, and domestic sales showed a 63.7% growth. And in country, the number was 65%. And in-country consumption has grown also 23%. So all in all, globally or even in countries, 1 out of 10 new sold cars are EVs. Exports, the number was 220,000 units. It was a 43.2% growth. So all of these vehicles are manufactured in Korea, then export after. Ioniq EV6 Kona has shown some good numbers in exports. So this is the Korea's in-country EV policy. When it comes to China, they have a strong subsidy policy. And that is one of the main reasons they are quite competitive in the EV market. And they only give subsidy to only China battery use companies. So that is a little bit discriminative in China. And that way they could stay competitive. Currently, there's been the IRA law, and USA is also subsidizing EVs only manufactured in the US. So for Korea, most of our cars were subsidized if they are manufactured in Korea. But starting this year, manufacturers are thinking a lot to make some changes. So it's not for us to be more discriminative, but because the size of our subsidy is limited, we want to make some changes in our policy. So when it comes up to the range and other issues, so there's been some criteria for incentives. So for medium and large vehicles, the subsidy is up to 6.8 million won, and for small vehicles, the number is 5.8 million won. But the size of subsidy is reducing year on year. So until 2024 or 2025, the subsidy will end from the Ministry of Environment. And we will be more focusing how to make Korean manufacturers more competitive. So this is not a bad thing. And that means we have to make Korean companies more competitive in the global market. So that is the basic of Korean subsidy policy. So last September, our ministry has made a new policy, the Global Top 3 strategy, so which aims at a global production of 3.3 million cars in 2030 with a market share of 12%. And hydrogen vehicles also, we are aiming at 4.5 million cars by 2030. So the number is 4.2 million EVs and 300,000 fuel cell EVs. The number was 3.6 million EVs and 880,000 FCEVs. But currently, the hydrogen vehicles are not doing that good. So we increased the numbers for EVs because our EV companies have more competitiveness, and we reduced the numbers of fuel cell EVs. The total number would be, again, 3.3 million. When it comes to infra, we aim at 1.23 million EV chargers to increase the numbers from 5% to 10% for FCEVs. And for developments, we aim to increase the range from 500 kilometers to 600 kilometers. The charging time will be reduced to 5 minutes minimum. And again, we will nurture human resources by 3 million people. And this is where we lag behind compared to US and other countries as well. And again, when it comes to ICE vehicles, we will reduce them more. And for parts and components manufacturers, they already made a lot of investments in the ICE vehicles, and hybrids can act as a cash cow for future vehicles. So again, this is a dual lane of our policy. And this is our domestic investment plan. So by 2026, our plan is to invest 95 trillion won plus alpha. When it comes to Hyundai Kia, they started a purpose-driven plan. So more than the Hwaseong plan also, the Hyundai Ulsan plant and the Kia Kangbyeon plant will be fully transformed to EV manufacturing. So this is our startup stage. Currently, we have the IRA Act. Of course, we are now building the Georgia plant, but we will make it much shorter. So we did this opening ceremony last year, and in Indonesia, we are manufacturing our Ioniq 5. So currently in Indonesia, I know that Ioniq 5 sells very well in the Indonesian market, and by 2030, Hyundai Kia aims at 3.64 million, and out of that number, 1.51 million will be manufactured in Korea, and the export number will be 910,000 vehicles. And the size of investment will be 24 trillion won and 31 models. GM Korea and Renault Korea, all the two foreign companies, are not manufacturing EVs in Korea. And they have import plans in the future. And GM Korea wants to have an R&D center. They also have a GMTCK technical center in Korea. So they will be doing R&D in Korea and manufacture in the US. KG Mobility, they hold the SsangYong brand. They have achieved the SsangYong brand. And their company name is now KG Mobility. So KG Group have achieved SsangYong Group. And they have some bold plans for EV investments. Very recently in March, in Seoul Mobility Show, they introduced 4 EV brands. By 2025, they have a plan on EV based on Taurus. So this is their main plan. And very recently, they achieved Edison Motors. They also are have a plan for manufacturing for EV buses. They plan to export to Southeast Asian countries. The IRA Act have also touched upon the auto parts and manufacturers, so we have to follow that. And to cope up with foreign demands, we have to focus more on foreign investments for parts and components industry. Next is China and Korea auto trade and Japan trade. So when it comes to Korea-China trade, the EV export have risen and there's been more exports. So what we are exporting, we saw an 104% increase. The number is 140 million. That comes from less COVID-19 quarantines. And again, EV export has risen a lot. Polestar and EV buses Chinese EV buses are sold in Korea for more than 50% of total. And including that, the size of trade has been increased a lot. For auto parts and components, the major imports came from Japan and Germany. Recently, the Chinese parts and components are showing good quality, so we started to import more Chinese components. And for batteries, import, the number is about $3.4 billion. BYD and other companies for lithium-ion steel, we are importing a lot of these lithium-ion phosphate steel batteries. And in Korea, the numbers is a mere 1.9 million, 19 million, so it is very small. And our trade with Japan, the size of exports has been risen a lot. No, I'm sorry, it is decreasing gradually. But the size of EB has been gradually increased a little bit. But we do not import a lot from Japan. The number was 35 or very recently 80, so the percentage increase was quite big. Last year, Ioniq 5 was released in Japan, and we have seen some sales in Japan. And so our export to Japan has been increased a lot. Parts and components with Japan. So in the past, we imported a lot of Japanese parts and components. So we saw a lot of increase back then, but it started to decrease. So in the 2020s, the size at about $1.2 billion. And batteries, both countries has their own competitiveness. So again, the size of imports and exports are not that high. Now the trilateral cooperation, Korea and China. Back in 2021, Hyundai has built a plant in Guangzhou for battery. Very recently, in Shanghai Motor Show, Hyundai announced a plan for Chinese Nexo and also Staria with a hydrogen fuel cell. KG Mobility, with the SsangYong brand, are now working with Chinese companies. They have a plan to manufacture 100,000 Taurus EVs annually, and Echo Pro SK and GEM have made a precursor plant in Saemangeum area in Korea. Our cooperation with Japan, LG Energy Solution, for the first time established a joint battery venture with Honda in the US. They are now constructing it. So LG, SK, and SDI, and all these Korean companies are working with US and EU companies. So with Japan, this was our first time. Sumitomo Chemical has established a separator factory in Daegu, and they are selling to Panasonic and Tesla. POSCO Group has started a cooperation with Honda in secondary battery, and they are leading the cooperation. So lastly, how we can cooperate trilaterally. So Korea, China, and Japan have their strong points. They have AI technology and semiconductor technology, and they also have their own battery competitiveness. So they have their own competitive technology. So we can collaborate to utilize this strong technology. So more than EVs, UAM, and robots, and share economy are also the future points of collaboration. So there are many chances to collaborate in the future. And the battery resource plan is also something that we can collaborate in the future for their supply chain. And for RCEP, the three countries are all members that also would be very helpful to fully utilize our trades. And we also heard from other speakers when it comes to policies, and we also can cooperate on our future policies and regulation as well. One more thing is, from our industry, we are trying to make a collaboration among our automobile association, KAMA, JAMA, and also China. We are having a joint expositions, and we are fully cooperating with other countries' associations as well. So we are also having a technological exchange, and we hope for more possibilities in the future. We have a hydrogen mobility show in September in Korea. Japan have a Japan mobility show in late October this year. In China, they have Shanghai Beijing Motor Show. So we can use these opportunities for further future collaboration. So all in all, in the future, there are a lot of rooms for us to collaborate for trilateral cooperation plan. And for that, we need more support. And with the support, we might be able to lead the market in the 3 countries. Thank you very much for listening.
예.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. He talked about 3 countries, EV markets, and cooperation status, and outlook in terms of batteries and car markets. And he also talked about the possibility of expansion of UAM. Next is about China's EV industry status and prospects and trilateral cooperation. And the speaker is Liu Xiaoxi, the Deputy Secretary General of China EV 100. But it's a national holiday in China, so he sent a video, and the Vice Consulate of China will give us translation. So the video is in Chinese, but the Vice Consulate will provide translation in Korean. Yeah, we have applied another technology for providing this speech. So there will be a video on, and the Vice Consulate will give us translation. Are you ready?
예.
Okay. He talked about 2020's EV sales. It was about 6 million cars. It's about 93.4% growth. And the first quarter, the production of EV was 1.6 million. It was a 26% growth.
예, 중국
EV production in 2008, it was 0.4%, but in 2022, it's about 25%. So it's a rapid growth. The new car share EV production is 25.6% out of the whole new cars.
중국은 그 2025년
2025
에너지의 다양화
energy diversification project will be launched.
하기 위해서 전기차 보급을
So the supply of EV will be increased.
전기차 중장기
And there is a long-term plan as well.
정부는 그 재정
The government will provide financial support to promote EV industry's development.
예, 그
About 2019, the government launched a plan of industry development. Among them, there is 2025 plan, which is EV sales 25% out of the new cars production. And this goal was achieved last year, as I told you.
예, 지금은 그 중국 내연차 도세 내연 기관차를
About combustive engine cars, there is a transition project. So EV technology will be nurtured to transfer traditional cars into electric vehicles.
예, 예, 그
About three countries. I'll tell you about EV battery development. The three countries leading the development of EV batteries, and the demand is increasing. And these three countries will lead the EV battery industry in the future as well.
예, 저그 배터리
About battery technology, it's in development and it's being advanced. And the safety is being improved.
그리고 현재는 잔열 조행까지
And we are also thinking about self-driving cars technology.
통해서 대부분 잔열 조행 기능을
So we already have the technology for self-driving cars, which is pretty much advanced.
예, 그 지금은 친환경차
Today's eco-friendly cars development is ongoing, but in self-driving cars,
중요한 부분입니다.
it's important for the growth of eco-friendly cars growth.
인프라 시설도 계속
So we are expanding our infrastructure and charging stations are about 80,000 in China.
그 2021년에
In 2021,
어떤 회사가
all the car makers, EVs,
200km에
can be charged and go 200 kilometers with 10 minutes charge. And the technology of charging is being advanced, so fast charging technology is in process.
예, 그 중국은
China is very much interested in developing self-driving cars technology. And we have already created the test bed. And the length is about 9,000 kilometers. And it's going to be expanded in the future.
예, 중국에서 5G 기술 잘 비교해 있는데요.
China is developing a lot of related technology,
5G 기술을
and which is also about 5G technology. We are utilizing 5G technologies to promote self-driving cars. So we are working hard for the development of science technology.
但是我们的竞争的实力正在不断增强，成本也不断下降。那么纯电动的2022年纯电动的车型价格上移，插混车型价格下探，终端车型的电动化进展迅速，新能源汽车销售结构将从两菱型向上推行优化。插电式混合动力技术的突破和车型供给的丰富，将成为中国电动汽车市场持续增长的关键支撑。
그
China is pursuing various kinds of electric cars, including small ones to big ones. And the competitiveness is increasing, and the cost is decreasing because the competition is getting higher. And charging infrastructure and technologies are in development. So the EV market will be expanded through our efforts.
中小城市将成为新能源汽车新的增长引擎。2022年23线及以下城市新能源汽车销量占全国的54%。比如从所、来宾、三亚等城市的新能源汽车渗透率正在快速提升，已经甚至超过了50%，高于全国的平均水平。毕竟2023年23线及以下城市的购车需求将持续释放，成为新能源汽车市场的重要支撑。
예, 그 중,
There are charging infrastructures being expanded in small cities and medium-sized cities. And the sales of EV in small cities are 54%. And the infrastructure will be expanded in those cities. So the market share of the middle-sized and small-sized cities will also be increased.
绿色转型，中日韩作为东亚地区3个大国，占全球 GDP 的比例很高。中国2022年18万亿美元 GDP， 日本4.9万亿，韩国1.66万亿。中日韩是东亚经济发展的核心力量，区域互通互联、文化互通、经济库是我们的合作基础。我们三方如果开展交通领域的
예,
The three countries is leading development in terms of the development of Asian countries, and the world is pursuing green growth. And so we need to cooperate in terms of EV technologies so that we can co-grow. We can grow together.
可以共同探讨支持电动汽车快速发展的政策体系，这是我们的合作途径。我们的合作前提是3个国家具有发展区域产业集聚效应的潜力，加强三方经济的一体化，将是所有国家受益。
예, 그
The three countries have carbon reduction goals, so we can cooperate in terms of policy making and also in economic sectors. If we do so, the three countries' economic development will also be promoted.
具体看，在动力电池领域，通过联合投资和研究合作，可以加快核心技术的突破。比如，在钠电池方面、固体动力电池方面，都有发展合作的前景。
예, 특히 그
And we are also leading battery sectors. That means we have big room for cooperation in there. And there are many new technologies in batteries, so we can cooperate in terms of developing new technology in terms of batteries.
在基础设施方面，大功率充电和储能需求也都是我们可以共同合作、建立成标准的一方面的工作。智能网联方面，传统的驾驶向社会协同、绿色低碳、无人驾驶的跨越，新的模式可以加速形成。世界各国相继出台了。
예.
Especially, we can co-invest in batteries, and we can also promote R&Ds. And we can cooperate also in charging technologies for co-growth. Furthermore, self-driving technology is in development so that we can work together to promote self-driving technologies. There are many sectors we can do so.
引导智能网联汽车的快速发展，自动驾驶产业正在逐步走向标准化和规范化。这个中日韩的合作可以起很重要的作用。
되게 그 전열
Especially in terms of self-driving cars. We can work together for standardization. If we make it, we will contribute to further development of self-driving cars as well as EV.
汽车产业发展的重要特征，在供应链和国际化方面的合作将助力企业节省投资、缩短周期、加快产品迭代，对电动汽车的发展具有重要意义。
So globalization is ongoing. So working with our neighbors is very important. So we should establish industry chain altogether so that we can get many benefits.
부영사님,
Vice Consulate, so you talked about batteries and industrial chains. So I think you have delivered enough messages. So I believe this will conclude your presentation. Thank you.
Again, Vice Consul, thank you very much. Thank you. So our next speaker will be Yu Hai Yan, Chief Representative of CCPIT Seoul. She will deliver a special session about CCPIT. I will make it very quick if possible. So here at the 10th IEVE, what I want to introduce is China's CCPIT and its major exhibition that we have held this year. It is a great honor for me to do this presentation in front of you. So the China Council for International Trade Promotion, it's same to KOTRA in Korea. So the China Council for the Promotion of International Trade is running this body. So CCPIT has been working for about 70 years. So exhibition and legal issues and patents, copyrights are the major things that we handled. Currently, there are another thing that we have started to attract more investment. And I joined the entity last year, and I am in charge of investment. And I learned about the EVs this year, and thank you very much. This is what we are doing, what we're doing in CCPIT. This is our platform here. We do exhibitions. And our mission for Korea actually started in 1992 when the bilateral ties of the two countries has first formed. And we were actually in COEX for China Trade Exhibition. I believe it's been more than 30 years that we've been operating. And for private ties, we did it with KOTRA. This is China Chamber of Commerce in Korea. We have about 196 Chinese members in Korea, and the office is shared with our office, and we have small branches here. And we have a Jeju branch, and one of our exhibition halls was done by Jeju office. This is what we do here. One in the center was with Gyeongsangbuk-do Province. It was this year's March. So we mainly focus on exhibitions here. This is our exhibitions in China. So CCPIT is doing a lot considered to this fairs and exhibitions. In 105 cities, the number is more than 1,370 exhibitions and fairs. So in our homepage, you can see each of them. So this is our major cities. You can also search for the city names and also by industries. So what we do mainly is trade and investment related fairs. And actually, I excluded everything else. So there are actually a lot more. So please confer to this list. So inside CCPIT, there are a lot of branches. And there are also branches that held more type of exhibitions inside CCPIT. We have internal expos as well. And some are overlapping here. The same thing again. Last thing I want to mention is this China International Supply Chain Promotion Expo. Let me briefly introduce on this. The next one will be held late November this year. The principle is co-build, co-promote, and co-share. So we procure trade promotion platform and innovation exchange platform also. So this is with global suppliers and key industries. Actually, the venue will be more than 100,000 square meters. We will talk about green value chain, green agriculture, green energy, and also healthy life care, and also digital technology chain. This will be our 5 focused industrial chains. And we will also have modern logistics and new business field areas. We will also have tourist idea exhibitions as well. Again, this is what I just mentioned. So what we mainly do here is our 5 major industrial chains. And this is already fixed. Germany, Thailand are joining, and Korea is also joining us. And Netherlands. And we are searching for one more country expo as well, country booth. This shows that we are doing it also online, hybrid. This is the price of our booth. And context, thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I made it fast. You can also refer to our homepage for further information. You made a lot of preparations, but because of time constraint, I'd like to say sorry. But we saw a lot of exhibitions introduced, and she told us about their sites. And it's the last session now. So we will have discussion time. The chairperson is Ambassador Baek Bum-hum. And he is the Deputy Secretary General, Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat. And the discussants are Mr. Albert Ram and Gabriella and Mr. Sim Jun-yeop, Managing Director, and Ali Izadi. So please come up to the stage.
오케이. 자,
So if we're ready, then please, Ambassador, you may begin. So I am the Deputy Secretary General of TCS. My name is Ambassador Baek Bum-hum. So I'm not an EV expert, and mainly I do global diplomacy. So all of you has been already introduced, so I will not introduce each of you. So what I heard a lot today is that we need collaboration, EV collaboration among the three countries. So I want to hear a little more about that. And personally speaking, I have some things I have prepared. So for our discussion, let us think about it. When we talk about the trilateral cooperation, so you might be very interested in the EV. So let me touch upon these general subjects. So let me give you this type of question. Just give me a second. Please allow me. So the first thing we want to mention would be, on our newspapers also, alpha and omega of EV is batteries, and nickel lithium batteries are fighting each other. So I want to know what is going on. And cylinder and square type batteries also, and also supply chains, how can we make it stable? And also there's a China-US conflict. It will actually pose quite a burden to this issue. So I want to know a little bit more about that. And technological things are related to national security. So the last Cold War we have was between US and USSR. The market was separated. But currently, when we're talking about the new strategical war, the market is merged, which makes the current status more difficult. So now, US and China are fighting each other, but what they're doing inflects a lot to the whole market. So I want to know a little bit more about that. And all in all, we were talking about batteries to run EVs, and to make the batteries, we need a lot of minerals. And when we are processing the minerals, we pollute a lot. And for making the energy, of course, we have renewable energies, but most of the energies come from fossil fuel burnings. So this is another issue. And again, the three countries, for them to become a dominant position in the global market, then what about the new Cold War? how can we collaborate? The three countries can collaborate to lead the world market, and how we can collaborate better. One more thing is, I want to know about this, and we are now running this EV forum. The Jeju Island, actually the size is 18.5 square kilometers, and the population is not that high. So this small island, how can we become a leader in Korea or even in a global scale? How can we become the epicenter of the new EV market? So we will not take turns. If you want to add something, please raise your hand. I will pass you the microphone. Thank you.
Maybe I start. I guess you asked like 4 or 5 questions, so it's very hard for us to kind of address all of them. But I think the current economic environment, especially related to EV, has given Korea, Japan, and China a great opportunity to take the next industrial revolution. I really believe in this. Not just that China present the market. If you look at, I've been involved in EV since 2009, 2008. In fact, my team was the one who first launched the first Tesla technology. And, but after having said that, you can see the development in terms of battery. You can see the development in terms of EV. Certainly, the leader initially for battery manufacturing was from Korea, SK, LG, and China is catching up. CATL is doing really well in terms of providing the battery itself. So from the Korean point of view, I think there is strategic interest for them to move into the EV direction. But unfortunately, there is sunk costs in the automotive world here. Hyundai and Kia has invested a lot of money in the gasoline engine development. Typically, engine development is about 800 million just for the development itself, plus a small-scale factory in terms of the cost. So in order for them to move to EV initially, that's why they've been a lagger in terms of endorsing EV. On my way in, I was riding an EV. I know it's EV. But it is a conversion. It's not a new built platform. The floor has been risen. So I'm sitting quite uncomfortably because it is a conversion from a gasoline car. And they just need to raise the floor so that they can fit the battery pack at the back. So they're still taking a back seat and trying to test. I wouldn't say they test the market anymore because they believe the EV market is there. But they still need to amortize and putting one foot in the gasoline camp, making sure that they still won't cannibalize. Using the word cannibalize means that create a self-internal competition between EV and combustion engine. Now, the development and the costs in terms of scale, they will make more money on the engine side, on the combustion engine vehicle, rather than the EV side. So I think it's a fine balance between EV growth and engine for the existing automotive company. But there is definitely opportunity for battery manufacturer to go more aggressively in terms of the EV market and producing the battery. Because at the moment, LG has very good technology, but lack of scale. And I remember I visited a Nanjing LG factory, and they were producing, I think, close to 2 gigawatts of, they invested $600 million US, 2 gigawatts of battery. But there wasn't much take up because there was a little bit of kind of trade incentive given to local Chinese battery manufacturer to use the local Chinese manufacturer battery rather than LG battery, because if you use the LG battery, you're not entitled for the subsidies. So there are things like that is creating a co-opetition where you cooperate, but you're also competing. So things like that will continue to go and continue to happen. So I'm interested to see how Japan can play more development role, technology role in the EV development side. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Maybe you wanted to mention, or you mentioned how the battery thing worked on and how the competition has become more fierce. And actually, I was in China back then, and back then, the Korean companies actually made a mistake. In the Nanjing battery was led by Korea, and that plant was thinking that Korea's technology was very much better, and they thought that they would be able to dominate the battery market in the future. That affected China's policy change, and now that made China stronger in the battery market. So this is what I think. Again, I want to make another question. So China has a national plan for batteries, and US is using IRA, and Korea is a small country. And how can we actually survive in the larger market? I want to know that. Please make it very brief. Thank you.
지금 중국의 지금 자동차 시장이 활성화되고 있고, 이제 미국이나 유럽도 3대 그 전기차 시장이 중국, 미국, 유럽이 되겠습니다. 근데 그 시장이 확대가 됨에 따라서 점점 이제 자국 보호 무역주의, 자국 보조금 이런 위주로 이제 시장이 재편이 되고 있는데, 지금 주목되고 있는 북미의 IRA 외에 유럽에서도 MRA가 또 이제 시행이 되고 있는데, 사실은 그 시작은 중국이었다고 봅니다. 중국이 가장 먼저
China first applied their local batteries and they provided subsidy to China. So the expansion of Chinese market took place. That's why the US introduced IRA additionally, and Europe started MRA as well. So in my opinion, there is Korean market and Japanese market. For survival of them, it's meeting consumers' needs, creating materials and components they like. Everyone knows the subsidies will end, and when it ends, we need to reduce the costs, and these components will remain in the market. In the era of subsidy, the US companies are advancing a lot. However, I experienced a lot, so based on my experience, there is a core component called A3. There was a powertrain of combustive engine cars era. That time, Japan has high technology, so the price of their products was the highest, followed by Korea and China. However, now it's the EV era, and China's market is being expanded and technology is being accumulated. So Korean companies Japan companies are almost same in terms of price with China. So it's difficult, however, the subsidies will end soon. So the ecosystem of components has a lot of things we have to overcome in terms of cost. So we need to provide affordable cost products. So in 2026, maybe we will be able to go even with other countries so that we can overcome the subsidies difficulties.
Yes, thank you. That makes me think that in Korea, in Japan, the market and companies, I doubt that we can actually survive. A question to Mr. Alizadeh. Then how can we do this? So for ICE vehicles, we used to have big countries like US, Germany, Japan, and currently for EVs, that power has been shifted to China. Then what about Japan? For example, Toyota, Honda, and other companies, can they survive? Can they make it?
Thank you very much for the question. I think we need to distinguish between whether companies can survive versus whether domestic auto manufacturing in Japan and Korea for exports can survive. I think the answer to those questions are very different. So please allow me to briefly elaborate. If you look at, since we talked about US IRA, if you look at the US market today, already the top EV battery manufacturers in the US are Japanese and Korean. So it's Tesla, Panasonic, and it's LG Energy Solutions, and then SK is also building out. And even under the Inflation Reduction Act, even though in the short term there are some challenges for Korean and Japanese automakers, as they expand their investment in domestic manufacturing in NAFTA countries, the former NAFTA, the USMCA, they will again take benefit of it. The challenge is not so much for specific Korean and Japanese companies, as long as they adopt strategies that can be successful in the global market, they will still be very competitive, and we're already seeing Korean battery manufacturers succeed in the US, in Europe, and even in China, where I agree with Mr. Lam, where earlier it was quite challenging because China had preferential subsidies. Now those battery manufacturing plants in China are also being successful. Where it's more difficult, as we heard from Kama earlier, the great presentation, is really exports from Japan and Korea. Japan still is the #1 auto exporter in the world. Korea used to be actually in the top 5. It's not anymore, as we heard earlier. And the challenge with that is twofold. One, the EV market is going to be a little bit different than the internal combustion engine market, in the sense that EVs on average are heavier, and you want to produce the electric vehicles closer to where you can manufacture the batteries. This means you're going to have more of a fragmented auto manufacturing process closer to your auto markets. So the idea that you're going to be able to economically, competitively manufacture EVs in Korea and export them to North America and Europe, similarly in Japan, and export them to North America, is just physically more challenging. The second issue, as again Mr. Lam alluded to, is we have to look at life cycle emissions. And from a perspective of life cycle emissions, Japan and Korea, unfortunately, the availability of clean energy is more limited. So again, from that perspective, manufacturing in a market where you can have, your manufacturing emissions will be lower, will be very critical. LG Energy Solutions, for example, its plant in Nanjing is already 100% clean energy powered. None of the battery manufacturing plants in Korea are 100% clean energy powered. So this is a second factor. Now, from the perspective of the governments, I think they have to think about ensuring that the companies survive, while of course providing opportunities for domestic manufacturing. But I think they need to be careful in not emphasizing too much domestic manufacturing, because this will actually hamper the domestic companies. For the Japanese government or Korean government, it's much more important to make sure that the Japanese and Korean companies can be competitive globally, rather than force them to be just focused on domestic manufacturing.
예, 감사합니다. 결국
Thank you very much for your answer. So it's a market and technology. So when I was in Germany, they told me a lot of these things. Germany and China, they have strategical collaboration. From German, we have technology. From China, we have market. And then, actually, market will beat technology. And again, what Mr. Izadi mentioned is smaller countries like Korea and Japan. More than technology, they need market. And that is what I understood. Maybe you want to add something, Mr. Kim? Yes, so what you mentioned, to add a little bit of that, what Japan is doing, actually, I believe they think they can do it. They focus more in hybrid. So Europe and China, they are shifting to EVs. So Japan seems to have a little bit confidence, so they are more focusing on hybrids. They're exporting a lot. Currently, Toyota and other companies as well, they are thinking that they're lagging too behind to this new wave of EV. So starting 2026, they are doing multi-pathway strategy and more tailored models will be built, which means that they are focusing more on developed and developing markets as well. For developing countries, they will sell hybrid cars. For developed market, they will sell EVs. So it's a more tailored approach. So until now, Germany and Japan have competitiveness in ICE vehicles, and they can do this hybrid approach. So Toyota and other Japanese companies, they are looking for 2026, but actually they have confidence that they can do it anytime. So internally, they seem to have no much worries. We are worried, however, but Japan, I believe they are more confident. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I thought about questions about can Toyota survive, so that's why I asked the question. And EV is clean, but the production is not clean, including battery production. During the time that requires many minerals, so processing minerals create pollutions. And then producing electricity generation, there is renewable energy, however, for mass production is about fossil fuels. We use fossil fuels and we burn it and generate energy. So I'll ask question to LED. So how can we produce 100% clean EVs? What's your take on that?
Well, EVs are not going to be 100% clean, simply because the production, as you mentioned, of batteries uses a lot of carbon. And when you look at comparison between ICE, hybrid, or EV, there's several studies out there, one from MIT, for example. But in all scenarios, EVs are doing better. You look at yearly CO2 contributions of EVs, they arrive at, the Department of Energy in the US arrives at 3,930 pounds CO2 a year, compared to gasoline engines, which are 11,435 pounds. So that's one aspect. Obviously, as you say, energy generation, one of the things that we have to aim for is clean energy generation. But even if you use coal or other fossil fuels, it's still cleaner. Now, in terms of batteries, I think I have one or two thoughts about some of the discussions. One thing is to compete. If you compete with the same technology, you have to go by price. If you compete with innovations, you can find other ways. And I'm thinking about the mobile phone market. When in 2007, iPhone was launched, it was competing in a market where people were talking about battery life and how long you could talk and whatever. And people forgot that this was a completely new scenario. This was a little computer in your pocket, and who cared if you had to charge it every night? Now, if you think about innovations, right now, 60% of lithium, 30 of cobalt, 10% of nickel are used for lithium batteries. There was a plus 65% increase in battery demand between 21 and 22, 550 gigawatt. China is working on lithium-free batteries, sodium-ion batteries. There's other stuff in the pipeline. As soon as we are going to talk about batteries that are lighter, that use less of these materials, we're talking about a different scenario of competing. You also talk about different ways of driving. One of the things I take away from discussions we had over these last days is everybody seems to be focusing on the car. The car is not the future in many areas. If you look at a city like New York, 15% of the city is dedicated to streets. If you look at cities in Southeast Asia, these are organically grown. They have much smaller footprints in terms of space for cars. So we're talking individual cars. What we should be talking much more about is three-wheelers, pods, public transport trucks, things like that. So there are a lot of areas where countries like Japan, like Korea can compete if they think about it in different ways, not in the traditional one person per car kind of approach. And even if you go car sharing, it's still not very sustainable. So I think there has to be another mind frame. And innovation has to drive this thing. I think technology and innovation has to drive this thing.
Thank you very much. So we need competition so that we can change the environment. But in a whole, EV has less pollution than ICE cars. And then what we have learned is that car should not be allowed, so we should reduce the number. So in many sectors, we need to transfer things. Anyway, we need it. So what about car makers? They will think the market will be shrunk in the future. So to maintain our ecosystem, and how can we maintain our car manufacturing industry? That will be an issue of academia and industry leaders. So my last question, do we have time? It's technological thing. We talk about new batteries, ternary batteries, and the lithium is led by China. So there is a performance difference. However, the gap is being narrowed. So can you tell us about the battery policies of three countries, and can you tell us about the direction? I'd like to ask this question to everyone, and please answer to the online participants.
So we are manufacturing the only cars with NCM batteries, and this November we will be starting using Chinese LFP batteries. And this vehicle is not the same as NCM batteries. Normally we say LFP is worse, but it's not the truth. They have the same battery capacity, and actually the range is the same. So when developing batteries, so when it comes to EV, there are a lot of aspects, but what we have to focus in the batteries is three things. One is thermal runaway. How can we address the thermal runaway issue? Second is the range, how to set the battery performance. The third is, of course, the price. Most of the price of the EV, the subsidy, goes to EV's battery price. So when it comes to thermal runaway, LFP is safer. So we are started using LFP more. And the early NCM EVs had a lot of fire issues. And actually, the fire is not more than ICE batteries, but the thermal runaway is visually very shocking. It just looks like a bomb terrorism. But currently, NCM or LFP, when it comes to battery catching fire or thermal runaway, the risk is much lower. Second, when it comes to running distance, the range, NCM itself has a longer range because of high density. That was the normal situation. But when it comes to technology, LFP is the latest technology, and we will be using the start to pack technology. We got rid of all cell modules. Then we can have equal density as well. Actually, NCM has had a counterattack. NCM is now using the cell to package technology. One of our partners, one in Korea, one in China, actually they are starting to have solid-state battery technologies, and by the end of 2023, we will finish our technology, and starting next year, we believe they will be commercialized, the solid-state batteries. And for safety, the issue would be about the same. So the third thing is price. The tertiary battery, NCM, nickel, cobalt, manganese, the price comes from the raw materials. So in the near future, the battery market will actually see a price-led structure. You also mentioned the emerging market, but also Europe and emerging markets. And for general penetration, I believe LFP will lead the lower cost market, middle and higher cost EVs. For performance cars, NCM will lead the market, I guess. So our vehicle developments currently focuses on LFP for lower cost models, and for longer range and higher performance vehicles, we focus more on NCM batteries. I hope that was a good answer. Thank you.
Thank you. So ternary batteries and lithium batteries, competition is about prices and the raw materials. So I think if KG win the market, I hope the KG will win the market through the technology development.
I would like to come back to something you just said, which is car manufacturers in Japan and Korea will see their markets shrink and might have to be afraid of that. When horses and buggies were replaced by cars, of course, horse and buggies manufacturers saw their market shrink. But the smartest one basically became car manufacturers. Today, there's a huge opportunity for car manufacturers to become providers of sustainable mobility. So to see themselves as only car manufacturers is probably a too narrow view. You see that same tendency now in the Middle East, where people were oil producers, and they are becoming now energy providers in the largest sense of the term. So there needs to be a rethink of things, and I think this is an industry that will definitely need to reinvent itself.
감사합니다.
I just want to add on what Gabriela just said. Don't have the illusion that Japan is not doing anything in this sector, and they are behind. They're not behind. Seriously, Toyota, as I always said, they have 40 years plan. They will not diverge from that plan. And within this 40-year plan, they're betting on hydrogen. And that's why you can see Honda and Toyota, they're working on hydrogen fuel cell technology. They already have vehicles selling in Europe on hydrogen hybrids vehicle. And the take-up rate is not as fast as EV, is because the infrastructure is not there yet, but it will get there, the infrastructure. And they are also exploring in terms of using gasoline as the the hydrogen as an alternative fuel for normal combustion engine. So they are working in this area very much so. They choose not to go into EV, but do not be allured that they don't have the technology. Even back in 2014, they already provided a technology to Aston Martin. It's a small Eagle, it's called Eagle EV. That was back in 2014, just to help Aston Martin to decarbonize their offering. Because in Europe, there are stringent rules in terms of your manufacturer. You have to offset your carbon tax. And they are already working in collaboration with Toyota. So to them, EV is simple, but they choose not to do it. It's because they have a longer-term plan in terms of hydrogen.
예, 예, 감사합니다. 아마 그
Thank you very much. So I believe that you know better than me about Japan, and actually you mentioned that these companies have longer plans. So last but not least, we're in Jeju Island. So when it comes to e-vehicles, we have e-vehicles forums. How can a small island, a small self-governing island like Jeju, how can we collaborate with more vehicle association? And how can we survive in the future? How can Jeju Island survive? How can we create more jobs? And how can we give people more income? So can we end on this?
Thank you. Jeju is working hard for providing EVs, and the rate is also high. And its special personality of Jeju, we need to create jobs in here. So through supplying EVs, we can vitalize some regulations and rules. So in my opinion, how we can utilize batteries, which was abandoned. So battery waste can be recycled. So if we do so, if the performance is under 60%, we can just extract the metals. And another way, when there is 70% remained, we can use it as ESS, or we can create hydrogen. So there are many ways, in my opinion. That's a possibility, and Jeju has renewable energy more than the mainland in Korea, so then we can create green energies, and then we can use it in other means such as hydrogen. So I have this kind of options in my opinion.
우리 한국 자동
Yes, I believe the Korea Vehicles Association can help Jeju Island a lot. And we have a lot of participants today, online and offline, and I believe we answered all your questions today. Thank you very much for all participants. Thank you very much again. Actually, we used all the time we got, and we were very sharp. Thank you very much for joining us. I believe it was about 2 hours and 45 minutes. And your lunch will be served at the Deli Eye restaurant. And our presenters today, please go to the Deli Eye restaurants for your lunch. Lunch will be prepared there. Thank you very much for joining us today.